The banner that you have behind you, Leona, says "Don't nuke the climate." I'd like to mention to folks, so if you look at Leona's bio that we had with the announcement, she was at COP24 in Poland and raised a whole bunch of hell with a bunch of other activists about nuclear power not being a solution to the climate crisis. So here's where the question comes in, and you've touched on it a little bit already, and that is the tension between the big push right now to close down coal plants, which is going on, and that sparks a lot of different environmental justice issues in communities of people of color in terms of local pollution, air pollution, that sort of thing. But the problem, like in states like Illinois and some of the others around the country, as you just mentioned, is that when people talk about closing coal plants, we've even had some environmental groups say, well, yeah, we'll have to rely on the nuclear plants to solve the climate crisis, at least temporarily. And that's a very easy thing to say, but the whole point of tonight's session is that there are environmental justice concerns outside of your state dealing with nuclear that seem to be totally ignored. So I'd like to get your reaction about that tension between the need to close down coal plants on the one hand, but this unfortunate impetus to then put nuclear power out there as the alternative in the meantime on the climate fight, and how that creates its own set of unique environmental justice issues. Hope I was clear on that.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just the idea of nuclear power has its own unique set of environmental justice issues, which seem to be colliding with the need to close down coal plants in some of these states like Ohio, Illinois, California, where they're trying to close down coal plants, but then they're saying, but yeah, we have to operate the nuke plants, which creates environmental justice problems outside of the state, like in the mining communities, for example, or in West Texas or New Mexico. What's your reaction to that kind of tension, I guess?
I'm not sure if let me just say some thoughts, and then let me know if I answer your question, Dave. So yeah, I think, and just to say again, I'm speaking as an individual because I did a lot of work before Nuclear Issue Study Group. Nuclear Issue Study Group started 4 years ago, but the work I've done as a community organizer started in 2001 as a student organizer. And then not until 2007, I got involved in uranium stuff. And something I know about uranium is, well, I have a lot of presentations on it. There's just a handful of countries that produce uranium, and uranium around the world, it's mined and produced mostly on indigenous lands. The top three producing countries are Australia, Canada, and Kazakhstan. But all of the places where uranium was mined in the past, they can never take out 100% of the uranium there. So as long as there's already documented ore bodies, those places will always be at threat from nuclear weapons development and from nuclear energy development. So because we're the ones who have the uranium, like we know where it is in New Mexico because of all that exploratory drilling they already did back in the 50s and 60s. And this is the case all over the world. Prospectors went out and they didn't share their data with the government really. But they have they call it like in-place minerals or in-place resources, which means they still, put a dollar amount on the estimated amount of uranium that's still in the ground. So I don't know how they estimate like, oh, well, we have this many, metric tons of uranium ore body, underneath Mount Taylor or in the Black Hills or Grand Canyon, so they can estimate how much uranium is still there. And then they, put a dollar amount on that. So whenever the price of uranium goes up, that's when the companies get excited to mine again. And just with the current administration, there's been a big push to deregulate and then also to remove protections that have been put on place in some of these areas. So the tension around having more nuclear power is an ongoing threat all the time in indigenous communities that have had problems with the uranium in the past. We're always going to be threatened into the future for new mining. So whenever, like just recently in that same video you mentioned, Dave, you know, one of our most progressive people in Congress, and of course the new Democratic nominee for president, they are pro-nuclear. They're saying we need to do, you know, do nuclear because it's low carbon. And I think all of you know how they calculate that, right? It's only at the power plant where that's where they look at the carbon footprint. So there is a major disconnect between the facts to say that nuclear is low carbon when they're not counting the carbon footprint of storing that waste into eternity. So that needs to be changed. And I think this goes back to my earlier comments about the disconnect between people fighting nuclear energy issues, having little to no information about uranium mining. So in some places, right now in Colorado, there's a friend of mine, she works on these things very, she's an expert, I would say. But the past mining was mostly conventional mining, where they took the ore grade, they took the ore body out of the ground, and then they put it on a truck and they took it to the mill and they, you know, crushed it and grind it into tiny pieces to process with lots of chemicals. The mining I was fighting was they were just going to inject chemicals into the aquifer, loosen the uranium, and then pump it back up. So there's different technologies out. There's a new one called ablation. So with all these new and different ways of mining, I don't think a lot of people, it's not very sexy. I mean, there's no one's really interested in learning this stuff, but as long as we're ignorant of these things, you know, out of sight, out of mind, they're constantly happening. There's some really good lawyers in Colorado who got a really good mining law regulation whole kind of overhauls passed in the legislature a few years ago. It was literally a couple of lawyers who were like hanging out and they were like, we should do this. Like it was their kind of dream legislation. They worked on it kind of as a joke almost. Like they were like, what's everything that we ever wanted? And they wrote it all out and they put it into a law, like a format of a bill, and they ran it through the legislature and it passed. So they're pretty happy with that. Of course, it creates a lot more oversight. It gives more oversight to the state and then who enforces that and who's watching all that, you know. It's kind of the same thing. You can get your best laws you can get your best laws passed, the best thing you want, but they can also be taken away and deregulated. So we just have to keep being vigilant. And so right now, I think because of the disconnect between uranium mining and nuclear energy fights, I've been doing I probably have done 20 presentations in the past month. And I keep focusing on this infographic that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you all a couple pictures. If I could share my screen, I don't know if this will help at all to kind of. I'm just going to show a couple pictures. I'm not going to do this whole presentation, but I'm going to open up my screen share now, just to give you an idea what I'm talking about. Okay, let me know if you can see this. Are you seeing my screen?
It's starting up. There you go. It's
okay.
on.
So this is an infographic that Yuko made, and this is just okay. Wait, can you? Is it there now?
Yes.
There? Okay, so you can see the nuclear fuel chain, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just for energy. Here's uranium mining, and then all the different steps. Just keep in mind, uranium is transported all over the world. It doesn't mean just because we mine more uranium in the United States, it doesn't mean that uranium is going to be used in the United States, because the ore grade of our uranium is quite low. In Canada, they have a very high ore grade, which means their uranium is more concentrated. So just because we mine more in the United States, that uranium will probably be exported to another country, because the United States wants the best uranium, right? So they're going to import it from somewhere else. So there's a lot of transportation that happens with uranium development, processing, conversion. This is a very simplistic model, but notice at every stage there's waste, whether it's natural. This is somewhat natural, T-norm waste, technically enhanced, naturally radioactive materials, or whatever they call it, mill waste, and then all the different stages create all kinds of bad stuff. And then you get down to the nuclear power plant. And then this is what we're left with, is the 80,000 metric tons. Well, when they calculate the carbon footprint of nuclear energy, they just calculate this one part of the whole fuel chain, which is the construction, the operation, and the decommissioning of a nuclear power plant. And then their biggest selling point is, oh, the smoke, that comes out, the exhaust is not even smoke, it's just water, it's just steam. So yeah, all of this stuff before, and the transportation and the how to deal with the waste is not counted. And now this is what we're dealing with, is this high level radioactive waste. But this other picture, this is what really gets to me. Okay, look at this map of the all of the power plants in the country, and you see, okay, I went a step forward. You see how they're all in the east, and then they want to bring the waste here to New Mexico and Texas. There's a different map. Huh?
It's not the map.
It's not the map? You can't see the map?
It's still the nuclear fuel chain.
Oh, okay. Yeah, somehow I get out of this thing. Let me stop it and then reshare it, because I got out of it. I have this presentation I prepared, which I wanted to show. Let's see, where's that picture? There's a picture I have. It's not right here, but I'm going to show you all. I got a map that shows. Oh, okay, here it is. Okay, I found it. Sorry for the short delay. Okay, so let me just get all this in order here. Okay, so I'm going to share this again. Try it again. So we have. Oh dear. Let me know if you could let me know when it's up. Is it showing my whole screen, or just the?
It's not full screen.
I don't want you to see my whole screen of all the stuff I got there. Okay, so let's see. So this is the map of all the uranium deposits in the country. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this is basically the uranium country, some down in Texas and then some in Virginia. But if you look at the next map, which shows all the power plants, they're all in the East Coast. So I would say I put those two maps together, and I think this is a pretty good visual of that tension Dave was mentioning. So here's where all the uranium is. They took it out. Well, we don't know where all the uranium came from to power all of those reactors, but the reactors are mostly in the East Coast that made electricity for all those folks out there, some in the West Coast. Remember, I said a lot of my people don't have electricity and don't have running water. So now, if you look, you can see where all the uranium is. There's no power plants in this part of the country, yet they took the uranium out, used it for either weapons or electricity. Now they're bringing back the waste. So I think this is a pretty good example of that tension Dave mentioned, that we got, we're always getting the short end of the stick. We got mined, they contaminated water, they created tons of health impacts, and there's no laws to clean up those 15,000 abandoned uranium mines. And then now, while we're still dealing with all of that, they want to bring all the waste here. So, I mean, it's a little bit more than tension, Dave, but it's a reality.